The Huns began to straften, couldn't make it out at all. Especially when the tanks began the caterpillar crawl. And the tanks went on and they strolled along with an independent air. And their guns began to blare, and the Huns began to swear. But they pulled the trees up by the roots and made the Huns look like...
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. But I think they're Second World War, not First World War.
First World War.
First World War, okay.
Yes. It's like potatoes.
Yeah.
And they come with potatoes. On the, yes.
You found them with your potatoes?
It's not me.
Somebody. Yes.
A neighbor.
Yes.
Made put these potatoes in my
okay.
barn.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
With the potatoes.
It's with the potatoes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they gathered the potatoes and the grenades came with it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, and this was the piece of. This is the track of part of the tank.
Yes.
And what was the name of the French guy again? Pierre? The guy that said that it was from an English tank?
Yes, English tank.
Yes. The Frenchman, the Pierre?
Philippe.
Philippe, yeah, sorry, Philippe.
You see the tank, Deborah?
No, I haven't got time, but it's okay.
Yes?
It's okay.
So, here we are then. Mark IV World War I tank, very similar to the ones that B Battalion would have used on the Battle of Cambrai. And this one's actually only 140 kilometres away from the battlefield. I'm actually at the Royal Army and Military History Museum in Brussels, and they just happen to have one of only 7 Mark IVs remaining. It's not being repainted, it's actually in the original colours, which is actually quite special. It's not actually that tall, it's not that big, although it's 8 metres long, just over, 4 metres wide over the sponsons. I mean, I'm just under 180, and the floor is raised, so I think the crew inside, they'll be hunkering over whenever they're inside, and it's not even moving then. Very simple construction, rivet, bolts. The plate is very thin, half an inch if you're lucky at the front, and even less at the sides, so it'll keep away small arms fire, but anything more and you're done, you've had it. A small 6-pounder cannon, shortened naval gun. I just want to take a look at the slits here. The gunner can hardly see anything out of this thing. If you think if it's moving, he's never going to hit anything with it. Small spy hole here where you can perhaps put a pistol through or a rifle, and again a slit for looking through. Further back on the sponsor on this mail tank, the Lewis gun on the side, and now the tracks are on rollers. Very little ground clearance, and this thing must have made a hell of a racket each time. The rollers, there's the axis for the rollers, where the tracks go on, and the track adjustment at the front through a simple screw system. At the top, we've got the beam, the anti-ditching beam it's supposed to be. These are actually fitted in the field, and the idea being that if the thing got stuck, the commander, through a mechanism on the inside, if the motor was going, he could make sure that that beam went all the way through, it would go round underneath the tracks, and hopefully that would give the tank just enough grip to get out of whatever trouble it was in. Whether it worked or not, I don't know. Might have been useful on some modern tanks from my era, like the Chieftain or something. May have worked, I'm not sure. Okay, let's talk about the crew complement of the Mark IV tank. On the left-hand side of the tank we have the commander, usually a second lieutenant. drivers on the right, in each sponson there's two crew members, there's the gunner and the loader, and to the back of the tank you've actually got two assistant steersmen, because the way the drivetrain is set up you need guys there to actually change the rear differential gears. So you've got 8 people inside this thing. All I can say is, thank God it doesn't do more than 4 miles an hour, because you'd be thrown about. I'm sure there's been loads of cases of the crew being concussed, being knocked down in this thing. It must have been hell on wheels, or in this case, hell on tracks.
So as you can see from this view of the tank, the serial number is actually painted on the rear sides of the tank. But that wasn't always the case. Sometimes they just painted the crew numbers on. And but just like anything else in the army, this thing does have a serial number, and it's actually on the front of the tank, stamped on the front of the tank with the 4 numbers 4093. So let's have a look on the inside of the tank now. So up front we have the driver's and commander's position. We're actually looking over the gun mechanism of the left hand 6-pounder, and just behind that is the engine. So it's a 6-cylinder 105 horsepower engine, and you must try to imagine the exhaust that you can see there going straight up. They would be almost white hot when that engine's going. Of course it's going to be a heck of a racket from the engine. There's also going to be fumes from leaking gaskets of the engine, and they will all be building up inside the tank. So let's hear from a veteran of B Battalion about the conditions inside the tank.
The noise was terrific, and the heat was very considerable, and the smell of cordite and engine exhaust fumes was pretty nasty.
So here we are in the rear section of the tank, looking across from the left hand to the right hand sponson. That bar in the middle is actually the starting handle, and that's connected on the right hand side there to the red lead coloured rear axle. Those two rectangular holes that you see either side of the rear axle are actually where the gears men accessed the final drives to change the gears as requested from the driver. And to find out how that actually worked, let's listen to another veteran.
If the driver wanted to turn right or left, he'd get a hold of a spanner and tap the side of the tank. I think one was for turn right, and 2 taps on was to turn left. And we had to put these big levers on into neutral. It wasn't a very easy job neither. Very awkward job.
So before we leave this tank here in the museum in Brussels and go back to Dessau Wood, I'd just like to highlight one of the other dangers that the tank crews faced, and that was what happens on the inside of the tank if it gets hit by a machine gun fire. And to help me explain this, here's another veteran of B Battalion.
The worst aspect of it was that if you got machine gun fire on the plate opposite you in the tank, the inside of the armor plate used to flake off in tiny little red hot bits, and we were issued with masks, rather like the Crusaders, chain masks.
One essential piece of kit used by the tanks at Cambrai that was not shown in the museum was something called a Fascine. The Hindenburg trenches were huge. They were deep and wide. Without some sort of assistance, it was concluded that the tanks would have extreme difficulty in crossing them. They came up with Fascine, which were huge bundles of brushwood mounted on top of the tank, which could be dropped into the trench to bridge the crossing. To support the 27-ton tank, 75 bundles of brushwood had to be bound and secured to the tank. This was done by having two tanks pull chains against each other to compress the wood sufficiently for it to be mounted on top. Can you imagine the amount of work this would cost? Around 350 Fascines would be needed for the whole tank force at Cambrai, or 21,000 bundles of brushwood. This meant hundreds of Chinamen completely stripping large woodland areas. So how exactly did they use the wood to cross the trenches? So what I've got here in the back of my car is a representation. We've got a section of tanks with the Fascines on top, and they are actually approaching a series of 3 trenches. This is just the other side of the floor of my car. So you must imagine that these are trenches here, okay? These are indentations. Okay, the tank section would attack in arrow formation. The front tank be crushing the wire. As the first tank approached the trench, it would immediately turn left and start providing suppressive fire into the trench. Second tank would then approach, following along in the path cleared by the first trench through the barbed wire. He would come up to the trench, dump his Fascine into the trench, mark his spot with a flag or a rag or something. He would go over the trench, turn left, immediately turn left, and start providing suppressive fire to the second trench. The third tank in the section then comes along, goes over the first trench, finds his spot on the second trench, dumps his Fascine in there, goes over the Fascine, again marking his spot, turns left and provides suppressing fire to the third trench. In the meantime, first tank has come back, gone over the first trench, gone over the second trench, dumps his Fascine in the third trench, goes across and goes to a rally point. The other 2 tanks come across, they follow. Second tank here and the third tank there. Infantry would then come behind and they'd mop up any Germans left over and secure the trench. Tanks would go to a rally point and continue on their way. And that is how they were trained for the use of the Fascines to cross the trenches at the Hindenburg line. This whole manoeuvre took a huge amount of training. You must remember the tank crews are closed down at this time. There's no tank-to-tank communication, and when they're closed down, they're under fire. There's smoke, noise, obnoxious fumes everywhere, the whole kabang, and they've got a very limited vision, of course, only through the slits in the tank. And when they actually go to place the Fascine, they have to really be square onto the trench. So it took a lot of coordination and a lot of work to get it right.